Hello everyone and welcome to Imperial Lakes Online, our newly digital lake series for adults. Across the next few months, across a week, we'll be exploring a different theme with researchers from Imperial College London and some of our artistic collaborators. And this week we're exploring back to nature. So we're really excited for you to join us in our virtual studio, wherever it is that you are, for our first ever plant life drawing class. As you can see, I've fully embraced that theme, but wherever you are, I hope you settled in and looking forward to tonight's session. So taking us through our workshop today, we have the wonderful Melissa from London art studio M.Y.O and Cathy from Imperial College London. They're going to be guiding you the tips and the tricks of drawing plants, but also telling us a little bit more about the plants all around us. So I'll let them introduce themselves properly in a minute, but before we get started, some practical bits and pieces. So this is an interactive workshop and we're really hoping that you'll join us in drawing some lovely plants today. So what you'll need for that is firstly something to draw with. So that could be a pen, a pencil, a highlighter, some paint, whatever it is you like. Second thing you'll need is something to draw on, so a piece of paper, a bit of a cardboard box, your living room wall, anything you like, you get the idea. And then the third thing is you'll need something to actually draw. So this could be a houseplant, it could be a bit of tree that you've brought in from outside, something you can see out your window, or even something that you can see in a different tab. The beauty of being in a virtual studio, I suppose, is that you can draw anything you like. So lastly, we'd really love to hear from you as we go through. So show off your creations using the hashtag Imperial Lakes. And if you're posting anything in the YouTube comments, we'll happily try and feed through some of your questions and thoughts to wonderful Melissa and Cathy. Please make sure you keep it clean. We'll be deleting anything that's offensive or explicit, so do keep that in mind. So enough of the practicalities. I am absolutely delighted to introduce you to the wonderful Melissa who's going to get us started this evening. So have fun, everyone, and over to you, Melissa.
Hello, thank you so much, Emma, for that lovely introduction. I'm Melissa, as Emma introduced me as, and just graduated my master's at Durham University. And alongside that, I'm also a fine artist doing oil painting, also a photographer and graphic designer living in London. And I'm currently working with M.Y.O, which is Make Your Own, a creative arts and crafts studio in London. And I'll be talking a bit about them later. And I'm here today to be your host and also interview the lovely Dr. Catherine Mansfield, Cathy. So over to you.
Hi, thanks Melissa, and thanks for joining us wherever you are. I'm really excited to be in a virtual studio. I like that I get to call my spare room a virtual studio. As Melissa said, I'm Cathy. I'm a teaching fellow in the Department of Life Sciences at Imperial. So my job involves teaching some of our undergraduates biology, but my real love, I guess, is for plant sciences, and that's what I did my PhD in. And hopefully we'll have the chance to chat a bit more about that, about leaf shapes and all things that I'm really interested in a little bit later on. But as a very non-artist, I'm also really excited to hear a little bit about a bit more about how to draw plants. I've got loads of houseplants, I love them to bits, but I definitely don't know how to make them look artistic. So yeah, lots of tips from Melissa, who, if I will hand back over to Melissa, and we can get started.
Great, thank you so much, Cathy. So I thought that I would quickly run through everything we're going to do in this session before we get started with some drawing. And so drawing-wise, we're going to be starting off with around 2 warm-ups to kind of get you in the mode of drawing. And I'll explain them as we go. And then after that, we're going to move on to adding more detail to our sketches or employing those warm-up exercises into a different drawing on if you need a different piece of paper. And after that, we're going to be answering a few questions from the audience. So please do send them in. We'd love to hear from you. And then all while I'm doing that, we're going to be talking, Cathy and I, about plants, her PhD, her role as a teaching fellow at Imperial, which is really, really exciting. And also, just to let you know, I think it should be in the YouTube description or comments as well. But you can download this worksheet. I can show you on the drawing cam. It looks something like this. And you can see a few more instructions. And if you missed anything you needed to join in with the session, it's all on there. So please do have a look. Yeah, I think, are we ready to get started, Cathy? Is this all good?
I think yeah, grab yourself, if you don't already have it, like grab yourself a houseplant or a leaf.
Yeah.
Melissa and I have got ours. We've got our whole collection around us. I've got this little guy that I really love. I'll be drawing him. And some leaves as well. So yeah, go and grab, like, we've got kind of a couple of seconds before we get started. Grab a plant, grab a drink, and yeah, let's make a start. I'll be drawing alongside, but let's focus on the drawing cam.
For sure. Okay, so I thought what would be really good would be to quickly show you what I'm drawing so that you have an idea. The main thing that I'll be drawing is this bouquet of sunflowers that my friend got me for graduating. And so now you have a bit of an idea of what my drawings will kind of shape out to be. So the first warm-up exercise that we're going to be doing, and it's going to sound a little bit weird, but I want you guys to just go along with it and try it out, is to do line drawing, so without lifting your pen from the paper and also without looking at your piece of paper. I know that sounds like a lot, but what I want you to do, and the reason behind this exercise, is so that you actually observe the plant that you're drawing. After all, this is kind of, it's quite interesting. Life drawing is obviously usually with humans, but this time we're going to employ those skills that we would use in those kinds of sessions to do a still life of some plant. So I think I'll get started. If you guys also want to have a look at the drawing cam and see what I'm doing, but don't feel free to actually do whatever you like. This is just kind of like a guide. So I'm going to look at my sunflower plant and we're going to talk through, what should we talk through, Cathy, to begin with?
It's really, I'm finding it really difficult to draw. I'm trying to draw along as well. Yeah. And not looking at your hands is really hard. And is this something like, is this normal for artists? Is this something that people get used to? Or is this something that is always difficult?
I feel like every artist has a different style of starting off or warming up. This is just something that I found really helped out with the live drawing classes that I used to run at university, to kind of get everybody in this kind of, well, we call it like a receiving mode. So instead of observing what you think you see, you start to draw what you actually see. I think also with line drawing, and I know this is really weird because I can see it on the screen, but also here as well. But it kind of allows you to break down the object in front of you and will later be building it back up, if that makes sense. So I kind of wanted to hear...
Please do share your images with us, guys. Mine is, well, actually, I'll show you mine.
That's great.
It looks like a total mess. I'm drawing this plant here, this lovely prayer plant. But it is very difficult, but we'd love to see what yours look like, and we'll be sharing a few later on.
For sure. I was also going to say, like, there's no time limit to doing this exercise, but I find that it's quite useful to kind of do for a minute or so, maybe do it in like 30-second bursts if you're finding it a bit difficult. But I think the main thing is to just kind of really try and look at the plant. I know that it looks like I'm not doing it here, and I'm kind of not, because I also have to talk, but do really concentrate on what's in front of you. And if you don't have a plant in front of you, I forgot to mention, do feel free to get a picture online and then you can draw from there. Okay, so let's see what we have here. As you can see, not the most generically beautiful thing, but I think it's important to remind you that, you know, whatever you come up with is just a warm-up exercise, and it doesn't have to look exactly precise at all. It's just to get you to start putting all your energy into observing what's in front of you, if that makes sense.
It's
Cathy,
actually really nice. Sorry, we will talk. We have stuff that we will talk about, but it's actually really nice seeing that even someone who does a lot of art, like your drawing looks very abstract, which is really refreshing. Because I think, you know, comparing yours to mine, like, I mean, mine looks a bit abstract too. So I think it's maybe not expected.
Yeah, for sure.
It does
I think, yeah, for sure. I wanted to ask you, Cathy, since we're kind of here to interview you as well, apart from, you know, drawing and enjoying ourselves, wanted to ask you about what your role is at Imperial and what you're doing currently, while I continue to draw a little bit. Would love to hear a bit more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, I'm a teaching fellow in the Department of Life Sciences, and have been for just about the last year. So kind of day to day, that means that I do a lot of lectures for our undergraduate students in biology and biochemistry, like running practicals and things like that. And also quite a big proportion of my time is spent developing new teaching material. So I'm really interested in like education kind of as a topic, and how best to teach science. So prior to that, I guess the plant science is part of me. As I said, my PhD was in plant developmental biology. So I'm sure we'll chat a bit more about this later, but I was studying leaves. So really love it when I get to teach about plants, because I think it's something that people often don't know loads about, like don't question, don't kind of look around them and see quite how great plants are. I might be a bit biased, but I think it's a really fun topic to teach, and hopefully we'll get to chat about some of the really cool things that plants do as part of this workshop, and take a bit of a closer look at whatever it is you're drawing.
For sure. That's so interesting. How did you... So actually, before I ask you a question, I'm just going to let everyone know, I think we're going to kind of start to move on from the line drawing, but please do, you know, send in your photos. We'd love to see what you've made, even though you might think, I don't know, this doesn't look like a plant at all. We'd love to see what you kind of have, made throughout the session. So please do tag us or reach out to us using the Imperial Lates hashtag that you can hopefully see on the screen on Instagram or Twitter. Yeah.
One quick question about your drawing.
Yeah.
Yours is really big. And I know we've had conversations about this before, but I wonder how many of the audience have a really big drawing that fills their page, and how many have drawn something really kind of tiny in the corner. Mine's certainly like, well, a third of my page, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's really common, and I used to do this a lot as well when I started drawing and stuff like that. But it's really easy to kind of draw a really small thing in the corner of a page. I feel like that actually is quite limiting. And if you can, and if you have access to like an A4 sheet of paper, definitely draw bigger. I feel like later on that will help in adding detail as well. But yeah, just to feel more bold and courageous with what you're drawing. I think that's one thing that we always had to remind our students when I was teaching life drawing, is that people are usually scared that their drawings won't look good enough, or, you know, all of that rubbish. It's absolutely fine. Like, just draw with your intuition and go for it. There's no right or wrong here. In fact, there's no wrong here at all. So like, absolutely go for it. I was going to just say, I'm going to move on to the second warm-up exercise. And of course, if you guys want to keep going with this line drawing, please do. But yeah, I'm just going to quickly explain it. So let me turn over this piece of paper. So for the next exercise, we're going to be doing some shape drawing. I know that sounds very weird, but what I want you to do is look at, again, it's an observational kind of warm-up exercise, but look at your plant, whatever it might be. I think for this one, I'm going to start, I can show it here. I'm going to draw this snippet of a branch of a bay tree from my garden, and draw that. And I hope this will kind of ignite some interesting conversations about leaf formations with Cathy later on. But what I want you to do is break down the leaf, the plant, whatever you're drawing, into shapes. And, you know, we'll talk about this later on as we go. If you have any questions, also send them in. But it can be any shape you want, really. I usually tend to go for ovals, triangles, etc. To basically draw the components of what you can see. The reason why I really recommend doing this is because we want to try and quieten down our brain's assumption of what we think we see, if that makes sense. You know, as Cathy and I were saying earlier, plants are things that we see in, I think, our everyday lives, even if we realize it or not. So kind of paying attention to it, I think hopefully it will be interesting for you guys and speaks to the main theme of this session, which is to look at plants more closely through art and science, which is a great combination, if I say so myself. But yeah, okay, we're going to get started. Is that okay, Cathy? You joining in as well?
I'm gonna go for a leaf this time because I think I'm happy.
Okay, for sure. I'm going to use a pencil this time, but do feel free to use any medium, just as a piece of advice as well. Sometimes, you know, drawing shapes is usually, anyway, how I start off any drawing, whether it's of a person or whether it's of something that's still life. And hopefully these skills are transferable for you when you're drawing other things. But I'm going to start off, and I hope you can see a bit of the plant here, but drawing, you know, this kind of oval shape, and there's a point, so maybe a triangle, a line. There are some curves as well, so maybe like some semicircles, would you call them, I guess? But really, like, there's no right or wrong in this. Just draw what you think it looks like, really. What kinds of shapes are cropping up for you, Cathy?
I find this difficult. Mine looks like a boat. I'm really doing it in pen.
That's exactly it. Yeah, you've got it. Like, it's a really weird activity because you're like, this is not what the plant actually looks like. But it's a really good way to kind of break down your assumptions, and later on you can build on it further. Sorry, I don't know whether you can see that. Build on it further.
I'm finding myself trying to draw the outline instead, which maybe other people are too, but I'm going to try and stick with the shapes. So, Melissa, maybe it'd be nice to hear a bit more about, you said you ran like life drawing classes. So yeah. I know your degree wasn't actually in art. Do you want to explain a little bit more how you got into what you're doing now, if you're able to multitask?
Yeah, for sure. I'll try. I actually just graduated from my master's in geography from Durham University, but I have literally been drawing since I can remember. My mum's also a graphic designer, so it kind of runs a bit in the family. And yeah, I started doing some like freelance graphic design work, which involved a lot of drawing, actually. And I don't know whether any of you in the crowd know Adobe Illustrator or the app Adobe Capture, but using those things, I incorporated my drawing a lot into my graphic design. And now working with M.Y.O as well, because I'm doing their graphics and also some website stuff and branding. I'm using my drawing skills to kind of involve myself in that as well. So it's been a weird, I don't know, it's very atypical for a geography graduate to go into this, I feel. But actually a lot of geography research is now starting to use creative methodologies. So I actually used drawing in my dis last year as a method, which sounds ridiculous probably to a scientist as well. But like it was very interesting. So I also wanted to give a tip to you guys if you're, oh, sorry. Yeah,
no, I was just going to say there's so many similarities as we're chatting, because you said you used Illustrator, like Adobe Illustrator, and actually that's what I made all of the figures for my PhD thesis in. And it's what a lot of scientists use to create their figures for things. Because
like
actually
graphics and stuff.
And papers for figures like in scientific journals that they publish.
Amazing. I didn't know that actually.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So it's such a, I don't know, versatile skill that you can really, or like also a versatile platform if we're talking specifically about Adobe Illustrator that you can use in so many different disciplines. I think especially if you're a student, like make use of the student discount as well. It's great. I was also just going to quickly give out a tip. I think if you're struggling with the shapes, and I'll quickly show you on a different piece of paper, I definitely start out by drawing like a central line and then like its middle line. So just to give you a few coordinates of what the thing that you're drawing looks like. So if I say this is the top of the leaf, this is the bottom of the leaf, and then you can like kind of go from there, if that makes sense. It also helps you to break down what you're looking at. And I think that's a technique commonly used by artists as well. You can sometimes see like artists using their thumb on a pencil to try and like measure out what they're drawing. But here it's a bit too close, so I can't show you guys.
A quick question from me about the drawing.
Yeah.
Does this, like, I find the shape thing quite difficult. I think I find it harder than the keeping your pen on the page thing. Does it get easier? Like when you kind of sit down to draw, do you now automatically see everything in shapes because you've done this a lot?
It's weird. I feel like as time goes on, you probably find it easier to break things down into shape. It's all about, I guess, like practicing. But I feel also like it changes every time. Like when I'm drawing people, for instance, like everybody bodily in shapes looks quite similar. So that's something that you can repeatedly kind of use as a skill. But when it comes to plants, they're all quite different. And I'm really starting to realize that now, drawing like bay leaves compared to my sunflowers. But it's really great, actually. It really keeps you thinking on your toes and thinking creatively. Something that I've definitely picked up working with M.Y.O, as they're starting out a new brand that's all about like creative thinking workshops and stuff like that. So I think it's a really important skill to embed these ways of thinking into your everyday life. Cathy, I wanted to ask you a few more questions actually, and I wanted to hear more about your teaching fellow role, and what it's like on a day-to-day basis in your job and what you do, and then later on, hopefully, we can move on to a conversation about your research as well.
Yeah, so I, as I said, like have a few lectures and things like throughout the year. Obviously, not during what is currently university kind of summer holiday, although we're still working hard, I have to say. So a lot of at the minute, day to day, is a lot of kind of teaching prep for next term, especially that we have to be a bit more kind of original and a bit more thinking outside the box in terms of like remote teaching and things. So spending a lot of time with students is great. Like I really enjoy being kind of running labs with them, running problem classes, and trying to make the teaching side of things quite innovative if possible. And there's some really great, like I definitely don't do any of this on my own. There are some great teaching fellows and lecturers and members of academic staff in the department and at Imperial. So it's a lot of fun working with them. But this is the first like public engagement stuff since I've been at Imperial. So that's really fun. But something that I think they've done quite well.
Yay! I was going to ask, do you spend a lot of time in the lab then, or is that kind of something that was more during your research?
Yeah, so more during the PhD really. I was in the lab a lot and on the microscopes a lot. So I spent a lot of time during my PhD on what's called confocal microscopes. So pretty fancy, expensive microscope. And using like fluorescent proteins and things to see plant cells. So we're talking about like observing stuff and kind of looking really closely. And certainly during my PhD, that was kind of looking close, like literally looking at the cellular detail and the subcellular, so within cell detail of plants. But yeah, now there's a lot less time spent in the lab. And what what time there is more working with students on other projects rather than doing my own research.
Absolutely. And I feel like, you spoke about microscopes briefly, but those kinds of, that requires observational skills in itself, doesn't it? Which links quite well to the session that we're doing now. Could you tell me a bit more about that?
Pressing, they have really fancy cameras, so just pressing when you want them to take images rather than having to use any kind of drawing skills.
That's amazing. Oh my God.
Good. Mine definitely, I've slightly given up with my shapes. I've gone onto a different plant, and it still hasn't broken itself down into shapes, but your bay tree is looking really nice.
I feel like with a leaf it's much easier, but when it's like a plant like yours, I feel like it can almost seem overwhelming. And so I kind of wanted to also give another piece of advice, which is that if you think drawing the whole plant, especially if it's something like that, I should have used my other hand, is a bit overwhelming and too big, I definitely recommend like choosing a little part of it. So picking like, I don't know, a part of a leaf or like one leaf to focus on first, and then later on you can stand back and try and employ those skills that you've just used to make that leaf, draw that leaf, to draw the whole thing, if that makes sense. So I'm going to start wrapping off. Oh, sorry, go.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I think people have put a few of their images on Twitter, so perhaps our production team can show us some of them. That would be really great.
I'm excited.
Ooh. Or maybe in a bit. Oh no, they're there.
Great. Oh my God, amazing! What? These are great. Fab. Oh my God, I love that money plant. That's
someone's drawn a Chinese money plant. That's one of my favourites.
I love that. That's great.
Also, that's impressive. If that was without looking, I am very impressed.
Yeah, I know. I'm really impressed. That's so good. All of them. I
love how abstract, but still like plants they look.
Oh, I like
that. It's still definitely a plant. Amazing. That's really good. That looks like a peace lily.
I know, yeah.
We love
I'm going to leave
that
guys, to the scientist. I'm not going to try and guess the species of plant. I can't do that. Okay, that was amazing.
Do you want to move on to our next thing?
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to also say thank you so much for sending them in. It's such a pleasure to see all of these. And it's so weird because we're online. It feels like nobody else is with us, but this is great. I love it. So as you can see, I kind of started to add details. Sorry, I should have mentioned earlier. But using those kind of shape drawings, or if you want, you can use the line drawings as well to make it a bit more abstract and add detail. We're going to start walking you through how to add a bit more detail to what might currently look like not a plant. So I thought I would kind of give advice as I go. I think it's quite difficult to give like clumps of advice, as usually drawing is something that like comes to you step by step, but just maybe a few pieces of advice before we get started. I would always recommend kind of breaking the thing that you're drawing down tonally as well. So like you've broken down the plant or the leaf in terms of its shape using triangles, circles, etc. But you can also do that for its tone, and I find that really helpful whenever I'm drawing something in more depth. So for example, if I draw the middle line there, I've got light coming from this way, so it's lighter on this side. And a technique that I usually use is cross-hatching. So just to give you an example here using a bigger pen so that you can see, cross-hatching is just overlaying lines. And obviously the more that you do it, or the closer together the lines are, it's going to be more dense and darker. Obviously also depending on the materials that you're using, but if it's a pen, usually turn out like that. So what I'm going to start doing is checking which bits of the plant are darker, and it's usually, for me anyway, in this plant, you can see the middle bit is darker because it curves in. And so as I'm drawing this, I wanted to ask Cathy more about some plants, since you're the expert, of course. And I wanted to ask you more about your research. You said that you did research on how leaves develop, and also a particular type of weed. And I wanted to hear a bit more about, what you researched and how you found it as well.
Yeah, sure. I don't have the same skills as Melissa in drawing and talking, so I'm going to stop my drawing for a minute. So my PhD research, as I said before, was on leaf development. So the research group that I was working in was really trying to understand basically how leaves get the shape that they do. So if you have a leaf on the plant in front of you, I have a couple here, you'll see that there's a huge diversity. Like, this is a little plain leaf, kind of spiky. This is, I'm giving you multiple things to look at, but this is a cherry leaf. So it looks kind of generic leaf shape, but it's spiky, or what we call serrated around the edges. And what the research group was really interested in is, how do those leaves get that shape? So if you have two plain leaves or two cherry leaves, they always look the same shape. And how does the plant know to do that? How does that shape form? And what's really interesting, and still kind of blows my mind, is that a baby leaf, if you like, so just at its really early stage of development, a leaf is almost always the same kind of generic blob shaped. It's called a primordia, and it's like maybe the size of a grain of sand. So when a leaf starts to develop from a little blob of cells, regardless of what shape it's going to be at the end, it starts as the same starting shape, if that makes sense. So then you have a question of, how do you get from the same starting shape to the huge diversity of leaf shapes that we see? And that was really the question that my PhD, I guess, slotted into. And more specifically, I was working on a plant called Arabidopsis thaliana. So this is a model plant, which basically means that a lot of plant scientists work on Arabidopsis. I don't have one here, but you can see it like in the cracks of pavements. You get it just like there's probably some somewhere outside. And it's this really tiny little weed that grows, as I said, like between kind of paving stones and things, with little tiny white flowers. And it was the leaves of that I was spending a lot of time looking at on the microscope, and looking at how the cells, all different kind of elements within those leaves.
That's a lot there. I'm just gonna also, speaking about something being a lot, I feel like I'm going ahead without explaining, so I'm just gonna quickly talk through kind of what I'm doing. I think you guys can see that I've been kind of like drawing like little circles like this, or like kind of with hard edges to add texture to the drawing. So something that I often do, and this changes with everybody, like everybody has their own style, this is just what I like doing, but I find it really helps to kind of draw these patches where something the tone is darker or lighter, and it's quite useful to kind of navigate your drawing and break it down bit by bit, because it can be quite difficult and it can be a bit overwhelming, and obviously focus on the bit that you want to add detail to. But I was going to ask a few more questions. This is so interesting. I feel like, we don't usually look at or think about these questions about how plants form or leaves form. But do you have any fun facts that you could tell us that might be like memorable? I don't know. I feel like we talked about this briefly before.
Yeah, so many fun plant leaf facts. So maybe I can explain a little bit more about like how we think leaves form. So if you have a leaf like this, where's my camera? There it is. If you have a leaf like this one, and imagine that this starts off like, some generic little, like a grain of sand or a pea or something very nondescript in shape. So how do you get this kind of complicated shape? And one way that you can do that is grow more in some places than in other places. So like this part of the leaf is growing quite a lot, whereas perhaps these regions here would be regions where like growth might be kind of inhibited or slowed down. And that's one suggestion of how those types of shapes form. But yeah, there's a whole, I mean, hundreds of people research plant shape, which I think a lot of people probably don't realise. And the specific part that I was looking at was really to do with the directionality of cells. So sounds fancy, but actually, if you like look at the hairs on your arm, they're all kind of pointing in the same direction. And
I just checked
that. And actually, that's not that surprising, as a lot of animals like fur and stuff will all point the same way. And so really the question that my PhD was trying to answer was, do plant cells have a notion of direction? Do they know like which way around they are in the leaf? And is that important in generating shapes? Because one of the ways that you can generate different shapes is by having a notion of directionality. But that gets very complicated. I think one really nice question that I think we can both answer, and we've had a question in from Laura, I think possibly on Twitter, saying, do either of us have a favourite plant and why? So Melissa, do you want to go first?
Oh, that's so hard. I think I'm a massive foodie, so anything that a plant that I can eat from is always great. I begged my mum to plant some strawberries for me. I love the flowers that bloom just before they grow, so I think strawberry plants are my favourite plants. How about you, Cathy?
I hadn't even thought about choosing one. I'm also a massive foodie. I hadn't thought about choosing it from a food
This must be so difficult for you, because you must know so many.
I'm actually not that great at identifying them. I think I would say someone had a drawing of a Chinese money plant, and I really love Chinese money plants. I have a lot of them, and I have a big one, the granny one, and it's ginormous. But really, there's a bit of a special place for Arabidopsis thaliana, because I spent 4 years of my life working on it, and it does look like a little bit of a weed, but it is really lovely. Your drawing is brilliant. It actually it looks like a full-on leaf.
Well, yeah, I thought I'd quickly explain a little bit, or also if you guys have any questions about why I'm doing a certain thing, please do ask us on Twitter or on YouTube. But I was also going to say, this is just a general plant lover thing, and I don't know whether you've been, Cathy, but Columbia Road Flower Market is honestly one of the best places I've been in London. I actually bought a Chinese money plant for my sister that I then stole and took for myself. And now it's huge in our garden, and they're really affordable as well. But it's such a lovely place filled with so many different kinds of flowers and plants. So if you guys get the chance to go, I think it's open now.
Yeah, it is.
But I recommend.
Can confirm it's definitely open. Actually, I wonder maybe if anybody has pictures. I know we're supposed to be having pictures of our drawings, but certainly my flat has become very much more full of houseplants during lockdown, and I don't have a garden. I have a little balcony, but I don't have a garden. And as a plant scientist, that's a bit of an issue. So I sort of filled my flat up with them instead. But maybe people have done the same. Maybe there's other people out there that have gone a bit gardening mad or a bit houseplant mad during lockdown. And if you have pictures of them, perhaps you're drawing them, that would be great to see as well.
I would love to see that. I think actually during lockdown, a lot of people, maybe it's just my family that are crazy about this, but they've really gotten into gardening. Like my friend was buying pepper seeds and stuff, and she's like, I'm growing them in my bathroom, and it's great. She's sending me updates of her plant growth, which is really nice. It's such a wholesome thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Put effort into growing something that you can actually see the results of and then draw as well. So you've got the
I think I've slightly given up on my drawings, but never mind. I was colouring it in. I have a coloured biro, one of those ones with multiple colours.
Oh yeah, that's actually a really good shout. I have a green Crayola that I thought we'd kind of use to kind of make our drawings a bit more elaborate. Something that I love doing, and it's so easy as well, is just adding like patches of color. It doesn't need to be particularly meaningful at all. And I thought I'd show you a quick drawing that I'd done earlier, and I do feel like the guy from Art Attack, but I thought I'd show you kind of the process which we've gone through. So drawing shapes and then adding a bit more detail, so like the outlines, which I've kind of tried to do here as well, and then adding a bit more detail. Ooh, I don't know whether you guys can see that.
Yeah.
I've just used biro, but as you can see, there's like some watercolor as well on, oh, I don't know whether my camera's, okay, it's chill. I've added some droplets of watercolor in the background, and it's not necessarily, you know, coherent with the drawing because I drew on top, but it kind of helps to guide any drawing that you might be doing. So just to add like blobs of color, I think is always quite fun, and it makes your drawing, I don't know, a bit more colorful and vibrant. I think we've got a question from Angela.
A question from Angela, which is a great question, and I've spent like the last 30 seconds thinking about it. So has the shape of Angela's question is, has the shape of the leaf evolved to attract local pollinators, or is that more about the flower? So are there examples of a plant's leaves evolving to attract bees instead of flowers? Which is a great question.
That is.
And I don't 100% know the answer, but I think, I mean, pollination is definitely more about flowers. So there are many examples of flower shape evolving to attract pollinators of all different types. It's not just bees as well. That's something that I actually didn't know till quite recently, but like white flowers are really important for moths and flies and things. I didn't know that flies could be pollinators until recently. Yeah,
I didn't know that either.
But one kind of cool fact that does come from that, Angela, is that some things are leaves that don't look like leaves. So I meant to bring some of my other houseplants in here that have really unusual shapes of leaves. But if you think of a carnivorous plant, so if you know what one looks like, or if you need to have a quick Google, there are carnivorous plants like pitcher plants, and they have these amazing, like almost like jugs that they catch the flies in, and it's thought that those are actually modified leaves. So that's a slightly gory example, because that's not attracting pollinators to kind of pollinate them, but it's attracting insects to catch them. And yeah, it's still something that's actively researched, but there is a lot of suggestion that a lot of these different shapes and a lot of these pitcher shapes, a lot of carnivorous plant shapes are actually modified leaves. So to a plant scientist like me, that's a whole nother set of questions. Like, how do you get from something that is 2D, like a leaf, that's pretty flat, that's pretty 2D, to like something that looks more like a cup? And that's another question that the lab that I did my PhD in did a lot of work on. But one kind of halfway point, if you think about it, I just saw that I had my little holly leaf in front of me. So there's a question of like, how do you go from 2D to 3D? If you look at like a holly leaf, that's already quite 3D, because it's gone like really spiky. So potentially, like if you imagine holly being even more spiky than this, could it kind of curl around on itself and be a bit of a cup shape? And the plant somehow has to control how that kind of cup shape forms. But yeah, great question. I didn't quite answer it, but lots of relevant, interesting facts.
And I was also going to ask, it's just an observation that I made now, but not all of the leaves on this bay branch are exactly the same. And I wondered, like, I learned a little bit about like diseases in trees and stuff like that, but can that affect the shape of leaves as well?
Yeah, definitely. It really can. I'm just looking at my little leaf pile here, but I think I went out at lunchtime and I tried to pick ones that were not diseased.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really can. And certainly, like, I've actually got a little bay tree out on my balcony and it's gone really weird shapes. And that's because it's not just, so before when I talked about like all the one species being the same shape, actually it's not just the plant's kind of own genetic information that determines its leaf shape, it's also its environment. So it's not like there's some element of size there, but actually also shape, like if it gets attacked by, I don't know, an aphid or all kinds of different things. That insects and pests and pathogens and diseases and things can really alter the shape of it. Absolutely.
And also, like, I guess like a really relevant topic now is climate change and how that's affecting like the growth of various plants, especially in like specific ecosystems and areas of the world as well.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah, good question. I'm not going to try and delve into that.
I feel like that's a huge question, isn't it? Like,
but it is. Yeah. It's. I think a lot of people ask, you spend 4 years like studying, studying the shape of leaves. That seems very kind of irrelevant, if you like. What's the purpose of your research is something that I've been asked a lot, and I think it's a really interesting one. But if you think about certainly what you just said about climate change, like actually maybe it's quite important to understand the shapes of, not just the shapes, but the whole structure of what we're eating, for example. So if you think about cereal crops or any of the plant foods and plant crops that we eat, like understanding how they form in normal situations or in climate change situations, and how they form the different shapes, like what's the underlying genetics in that plant, that could be really useful. So I was really fascinated by some kind of colleagues when I was doing my PhD, some other people in the same lab at the same time were interested in like how barley and wheat and maize and things form and how their shapes form. And then all of a sudden that really fundamental question of like, do plant cells have a direction, becomes a lot more relevant in the context of, food security and things like that. While I'm chattering away, your picture's making loads of progress.
Just adding, I feel like, just persevere with your drawing. That's another thing I kind of wanted to mention that's really important. I think you've got to keep going. Don't think about rubbing anything out. Just like keep adding and see where it goes. I've heard also from, Angela said thank you. That's so cool. Yeah, I agree with that. We've had a few pictures on Twitter that you guys have amazingly posted, so I wondered if we could show those now on the screen. Amazing, love it. We've got a little that plant pot is so cute.
I love that you've included the pot. I'm a big fan of cool plant pots. Wow.
Ooh,
that's amazing.
You've taken it the good long way. I like that.
Also, I really like on that one that there's like 2 different colors and that it's kind of simple. Like the colors, a bit like you said before, the colors are not necessarily in the place that you'd expect them. Very nice.
Yeah, I love that. I love like the difference between like how geometric you can make something look and also like compared to the line drawings. Oh, love that. Yeah, I love how you've like outlined the leaves and you're starting to go into more depth. These are great.
Also loving seeing the houseplants, guys.
Yeah, oh my god, it's so nice. It also really just brightens up a space, actually, doesn't it?
If you do have questions and pictures and things to keep sending in, we have a bit of time left maybe to show those, and it's really fun to be able to answer any other questions.
Ooh, somebody said that they're stuck. Drawing wise, I assume.
I think so.
Okay, I would really recommend, and this is sometimes what I do, just get a different piece of paper and do one of those warm-up exercises again. Just like completely take your mind off any like seeming errors that you've made. You haven't. Like just try and shake your brain up a little bit. try and see things differently. And again, if it helps, like draw out, like I showed you guys earlier, like the cross section of the object that you're drawing. I find that really helps. Or if you're drawing something a bit more complex, for example, like a sunflower, which is a bit more, I've stayed away from that this session, but for example, you kind of have the main, can you see that? You'd have the main body of the flower and like the middle part, and then you can start adding in like where all the petals would be. I know that looks ridiculous currently, but trust me, if you keep working at it, something will come of it. And I think it's always about persevering and not taking something at face value, but thinking about what it could become, if that helps. That was more of like a motivational speech than any like specific advice.
I have a couple of kind of similar questions, Melissa.
Yeah.
When you kind of start off drawing something and it's like quite a simple outline, I always think it looks a little bit childish, but you often see artists, I know you've done it there, like you're just building layers and layers and layers and like keep going over it. Is that any tips relating to that?
Yeah, you know what? I don't know, maybe it was a couple of years ago, but I saw an artist, he's a great artist called M.Y.O, and he does portraits, but he leaves out like the hair and makes it like kind of leaves it as lines, and the back, like the color on the surface of the canvas. And I thought, actually, I do need to spend time like doing every single little detail. Like you can do whatever you want. And I feel like leaving shapes like these, for example, it just gives it more depth, because you can kind of start to see that there are more leaves behind something. It makes it look fuller, if that makes sense, without even doing much. You're just literally adding like some lines. But like, yeah, I just want to like say, like, there's nothing that's wrong, or, you know, art is not meant to look like a particular way at all. Like it's art because it's what comes from you. I know that sounds really corny, but definitely like just follow what your mind is telling you to do almost.
I've been kind of scribbling away at this.
Yeah, let's see.
Oh, there you go.
So
this was my line drawing from before, like not looking, and then I've just cross-hatched and coloured one of the leaves in. Oh, there you go.
For sure.
Looks a bit like a 2-year-old did it, but there we go. So if anyone else has any other kind of images to show us, that would be great. And I'm sure you can also tag Imperial Lates if you show us them once this kind of live thing is done. A few of us will definitely be having a look afterwards at all the different things that people have drawn. We will go back and have a look at those in, I think, just a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Melissa, do you have a favourite? Do you kind of have a favourite medium? I know you've used like pen, a pencil, and crayon, and I saw you had paints on the other one. But is there, if people wanted to like go away and continue, I guess, do you have a favourite? And what would you recommend that people like me try out?
Question. That's a really good question. Sorry, I cut you off at the end. I really recommend, well, for me anyway, the process that I kind of go for when I'm wanting to try something different is look at what I'm drawing first and think about like what textures might be interesting, and you know, like what trying something new is always exciting as well. I really enjoy using watercolors, like you kind of saw a little bit on this illustration. But if you guys want to give and I say this because I feel like a lot of people are scared of it, oil paint a go. It's really forgiving, like because it stays wet for so long. You can blend so easily, you can build layers on top of it, and you know, you can keep adding various like resins and stuff to like keep the paint going. Almost, you can work on it for like, you know, a couple of days or like weeks. So I definitely give that a go. Like it sometimes can be quite inaccessible, but I'd really recommend, if you want to try it out, go to like an art class or like an art studio. Like, for example, M.Y.O, Make Your Own, the company that I work for, does like classes where you can just test out lots of different materials, and they have a bunch of materials in the studio, so you can really get creative. So if you go to a space and like kind of see what materials work for you and you enjoy, I definitely recommend that. But thank you so much for that question. Actually, I think that's really important. But I also wanted to say, it would be great to see where you guys go with your drawings. So even if it, takes time beyond what this session has offered, like, we'd still love to see what you come up with. And yeah,
I think we have a few more. Maybe before we wrap up, and we can go and have a look at some more of the things that you've shown.
Yeah, we'd love to see that. Oh my God!
Oh, cool. Some people have got. They look great.
So good. Love it.
Someone's got the colours out. Fab. I like that these are really big. Like mine always end up really tiny in the corner, but they're all really big.
Wow, we've got a lot. This is so exciting. That's a lovely rose. Is it a rose? Yes, it's a rose, right?
It's brilliant.
Yeah, okay. Oh, I love that. See, I feel like, you can go like really simple, like a very simple, like tonal overlay, and it can look so lovely. So it's, not all about like how, the techniques that you use. It's about more like what you enjoy drawing and like what kind of textures you like and stuff like that. Well, that's great.
They look great. I like that people. I like it when people have been brave enough to show us what they've been drawing as well.
Yeah, I love it. I love also the difference that you can see, like going from the line drawing, like using shapes, to then kind of filling it in a bit more. Hey, that's lovely.
Please do keep putting them on there. After this, keep tagging using the hashtag Imperial Lates, and feel free to tag us in stuff as well. It would be really cool to see what everybody's producing. Absolutely. Oh, nice. Got some people have ventured outside to get their plants.
I love that. I think like lockdown also is a great, well, we're kind of coming to the end of it, hopefully anyway, but it's a great opportunity to like really try and look more closely at, what's right in front of you. Taking a sketchbook or like a piece of paper to the park and just drawing is like such a therapeutic, nice thing to do. I think we're kind of.
I was just going to say on the same. I think on the same point, like when you're next outside and you kind of have a look at stuff, like just stop and have a think about how the shapes form, and you'll realise that people walk past plants every single day, and even kind of spending the time drawing them is really, really helpful to make you sort of question, like, how does that happen? Why is that like that? And really thinking about, how do these things form? And I think that's a really nice note to end on, because the art and the science are both very similar in a lot of ways, like very observation based. I've had a lot of fun, and thank you from me. Thank you very much for joining us. Melissa, any kind of final tips before we hand back over to Emma?
Yeah. This has been so much fun, and thank you so much, Cathy, for such interesting information. I feel like I would have never found that out on like, a normal day. So thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun. And I think, thank you to all of you guys for joining. Although we can't see you, definitely want to say thank you. I think that's it. So handing back over
to Emma. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Hi again. Thank you so much, Melissa and Cathy. That was fantastic. I hope you all had a great time at home. Thanks so much for everyone who submitted drawings. They were all amazing, so much better than what my scratchy drawing that I managed to produce here. So before you go, we'd really love to hear what you thought about the event. We're going to pop a link in the chat, and we'd really appreciate it if you could take a couple couple of minutes to just give us a bit of feedback. It's the first time we've done it, and we really want to make these better next time around. And don't forget to check out the rest of our Imperial Lates online programmes. We've got a couple of great events tomorrow night, a discussion, and our first ever nature-themed poetry slam, so one not to miss there. Lastly, our next Imperial Lates online events are at the beginning of September, and we're going to be delving into the theme of connectivity. Details again in the chat for you guys to register if you like. So all that's left to say for me really this evening is thank you again to the amazing Melissa and Cathy, our lovely collaborators at M.Y.O Studio. Definitely check them out. Everyone working hard behind the scenes from the production team. They've been really busy, and it's been a great event. We've really enjoyed it. And lastly, to you guys for drawing. So thank you for taking so much time in your day to join us. And it's been brilliant having you here. So see you next time, and have a really great rest of your evening.